If you were a kid growing up in the early 2010s and had a love for Let's Plays and horror games, you probably came across this genre of gaming at some point known as the RPG Maker games. Most importantly, the horror stuff that came from the RPG Maker engine. Most of the well-known creations during this time were stuff like Ib, Mad Father, and Corpse Party. Plus, all three of these ended up getting remakes or follow-ups, so it's crazy to see just how loved these older RPG Maker games still are, even though it's been years since their first release. I remember playing a lot of these for my old Let's Play channel, so it's really cool to look back on them now and see how many games are inspired by some of these creations. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new Let's Play on Mad Father! Yes, this is for Spook. So when I found a game published by Square Enix and developed by Astral Shift, I had to get it for 61 Days of Spook. This is the game known as Little Goodie Two Shoes. This is a 90s anime themed horror game. It also seems to be a sequel or a follow-up to the first game, Pocket Mirror. But as far as I'm aware, you don't need to play that one to understand what's going on in this. But apparently they do take place in the same universe, so it's still worth playing for that sweet, sweet lore. Now, for starting praises, this has to be one of the prettiest 2D games I've seen in a while. And they sure nailed the 90s anime aesthetic down so well. Plus, the amount of detail in the sprites in the world is breathtaking. My favorite effect in the game is when things fly across the screen, giving a sense of layering and depth to everything. This allows it to be in 2D, but it almost feels like it's in a 3D space. There's just so many areas in this game that feel like they could be part of a desktop background. Throughout my playthrough, I kept getting blown away by some of the amazing views Little Goodie Two Shoes has to offer. It's crazy how far we've come from the days of the SNES to now. This game also tackles other art styles from these 2D retro-inspired sprites, which somehow feel even more old school than the game already lends itself to these child pop-up book aesthetics. Add all of this with the game's gorgeous lighting and how it gives off this warm, soft glow around you. You have a very immersive 2D package on your hands. This all gets amplified once you get to the trippy levels where the horror aspects start to seep through the cracks. I know from seeing a lot of the footage I've been showing, the game may not look like a horror game, but trust me, when I say this game can get dark, I really mean it gets dark and disturbing real quick. But enough gushing about the visuals. What exactly is this game and what do you do in it? You see, Little Goodie Two Shoes, or LGTS is what I'll call it for the rest of the review. It's a 2D game with a lot of visual novel moments. You know, visual novels, the usual anime characters stand around and talk with 2D portraits with little to no animation. But while these moments do take up a good amount of the game, you will spend more time during your playthrough experiencing the small town life and seeing the world through our main protagonist's eyes. Getting to meet the town's residents while doing tasks for money and avoiding suspicion from the crazy ones. Living out a real person's day-to-day life, but unlike real life, working in this game is seen as enjoyable. You will play minigames that have a classic arcade aesthetic to them. The better you do in them, the more money you will get to buy items and food to survive. So it's probably a good idea to get very proficient at these early on. I really can't get over how these are presented inside this arcade machine, and the buttons even flash when you physically press them on your controller. There's even nice artwork of our main character here on the machine itself. Now, when you're not out being a wage slave, you can always find romance. You'll be able to romance 3 girls throughout the story. This is the first game I played that did an all-female relationship and made these feel like real connections and not an overly lewd or sexual view like a lot of anime loves to show when it comes to same-sex relationships. At no point do these characters grab each other's titties or seeing each other in the nude. It's quite refreshing and never comes off as feeling forced. My favorite girl ended up being Lebkuchen. She seems so down to earth and sweet to our main protagonist, and when the game was telling me they were longtime friends, you do get that feeling for sure. It's so easy for games to tell the player these people are lovers or lifetime friends, while failing horribly to show them acting believable. But this game tells and shows quite well. There's even little moments in the story where you learn about areas our protag and Lebkuchen used to play at. But I'm getting ahead of myself since I haven't even talked about the main girl of the game. Elise is your typical tsundere girl, which is an overly done trope in anime. I promise guys, I'm not a weeb, I just know some anime terminology. Please do not crucify me, I'm sorry. Elise is an orphan who was found by an old lady who heard a child crying in the forest. to then stumble upon a small baby left alone. This is when she decided to take Elise in and raise her as her own daughter. This is where Elise and Holly spend their time in the village of Kieferberg. We get this cute cutscene of them playing around while Elise is being a happy kid. There's even a scene of them farming in the backyard, showing how far their mother-daughter bond has grown. But as time went on, Holly started to become ill, leaving Elise having to take care of her as her sickness got worse. Soon, the sickness became too much for Holly to deal with, as we get this scene of them both in a room, as Elise is crying. We watch her give Elise a green pendant and are told by Holly that she loves her and is happy Elise was able to grant her only wish. The candle then fades, marking the death of Elise's grandma, as we fade into a scene of her standing in a dark forest, with her talking about how annoying it is for the townspeople to always be telling her what to do, and if it was up to her, they would be the ones who would be scrubbing her shoes. But because she's broke like most of us, that's only a dream. This is a good look into how Elise is always looking out for number one, since all she really cares about is having stuff that benefits her. Then some people come and interrupt her monologue, and we see it some of the townspeople. They ask Elise what she's doing out here and how it's dangerous to be outside at night all by ourselves. We let them know we're working late and that we're on our way home, and because of them, they're putting me in danger by keeping me out at night. They try to warn her again that it's not safe with her being out here all alone, and she mocks them, asking why feel worried, especially over a witch. Elise then lets them know that she's on her way home and she will be fine. We head off through the dark forest with the sound of crickets filling the cold air. Each step echoed through the trees surrounding us. Then, right before we make it home, our lantern goes out, letting the dark overpower the area that was once lit by a faint light. We head inside, trying to find some matches to see again. But once we're in the house, we notice a huge mess. Apparently, while we were gone, someone broke in and trashed the place. We head upstairs to grab the tinderbox so we can lift up the room to observe the situation at hand, but we get attacked by a plant monster that grabs Elise, making me mash a button to fight back, and then we see it disappear. Unsure why that happened, we go ahead and grab the matches and light our lantern. Once we light up in the room, we see footprints leading to the back of the house. Whoever broke in must have left these, so it's time to do some investigating. Seeing the footprints take us to the barn in the backyard, we creep slowly inside, opening the door to let the light fill the room, to then see what appears to be a person. Unsure who they are, Elise then hits them over and over with the broom. The thief begs us to stop hitting them, but she wants her shit back and continues. The stranger finally shows Elise she didn't take anything and pleads for the broom hitting to stop. Once Elise decides to show mercy from the beatings, the girl explains she's a traveler who's traveling alone and was hoping to find a place to sleep in the village, but some people in the woods scared her off, so she found this place to hide. Unsure what to make of this or if she's even telling the truth, Elise says that we'll let her go if she proves her innocence, which involves her cleaning up the mess she made in the house. This gives Elise the perfect idea to make her a maid, having her clean the whole house from top to bottom. The thief agrees to clean up the mess if it means she can stay here. We then both introduce ourselves to each other and learn the girl's name is Rosemarine. But for some reason, the name that shows up for her in the text box whenever someone uses her name is spelled differently. And as far as I'm aware, this is how it is throughout the whole game. So Rosemarine is one of the love interests you can swoon in the game, and honestly it feels like the canon ending choice to go for, especially since she's the only one who can do minigames with you in town and even gets exclusive artwork when you two play one of them together. After Elise is done scolding her for the mess of the house, we give her cleaning tools and tell her she has till tomorrow to organize the house. As the night comes to an end, we head upstairs to our room and see Elise's cold demeanor break. This is when we see some remorse start to build up from her harsh actions towards Rosemarine, with a mix of worry with her wondering if she could be the witch everyone is talking about, and if she is this so-called witch, then letting her stay here could be a huge mistake. But with no way to change what's been done, we rest our head, and this now begins our first date with Rosemarine. You'll notice up here a bread icon fades away, and this is when we learn about the hunger mechanic. You have a hunger meter that will deplete every time a cycle passes. This means that at some point you will have to work to afford some food or suffer from starvation. Now, on the one hand, I don't mind it, and I think it works for what they're going for by giving a way to force the player to interact with the minigames, or die. But on the other hand, this caused me to softlock at a very important moment of the game, that moment being right before the ending. So always make sure you have food or die. In the morning we head downstairs to see if our stuff is still there, but we're met with a completely clean and organized house with Rosemarine nowhere to be seen. Heading outside where we met her before, we see her still in the barn and it turns out she slept there last night. We end up apologizing for how we acted to her last night, with Rosemarine even apologizing to us back. We invite her to the house and see a random goat that runs over to her. This little guy's name is Flock. Turns out she's known this one-eyed creature and they met on the way here. Not much else is brought up about Flock, so once back inside, Elise tells Rosemarine she did a good job and we hand her some bread to eat as she's probably hungry. We let her know that we have to head out to town to do my normal day-to-day task. She asks us if we can meet her later so she can tell us something important. We agree and then head off to our Sunday meeting. And this is when the gameplay cycle starts. You see, the game is taking place in a week in their world as we have each day to do tasks and build our relationships. Which each job or romance date we do will make the time move forward by one cycle. You have dawn, morning, afternoon, dusk, and night, and one more I'll talk about later. Overall, your main goal is to plan out what's more important to waste a cycle on. Would you rather be making more money for items over getting a date? Or would you rather go on dates with everyone possible while barely making ends meet? You can prioritize love so much that you end up being too poor to buy bread. I wonder who would do that. Now, if you want my best advice, prioritize one girl for love and ignore the rest. It will save you so much time and you will have way more items and money to use. I decided when I played this, I would try to see all the love interactions I could to get more insight into the backstories of these characters' relationships or learn little details about the village. But by doing this option, you run the risk of lacking items when needed, which is why I had a soft lock because I was low on items with no way to get what I needed back. Once out in the city exploring, you realize how many things can be interacted with, and even having Elise give her thoughts to the player, plus all the NPCs talking and reacting to events in the story, makes this place feel more alive than just a typical town in an RPG. These people feel like they have their own lives and desires instead of just NPC 2345. I haven't felt this invested in an NPC since Majora's Mask, so it just goes to show you how much you will begin to care about some of the people here while learning to despise others. We arrive to the church and get to interact with some of the ladies outside who tell Elise she looks dreadful and needs more sleep. They ask if the storm last night kept us up, but Elise, being so high up in the mountains, didn't deal with the storm at all. Clearly, for everyone else, the storm was quite fierce with all the debris lying around. They talk about the witch and how she's probably behind the storm since it came from the woodlands, but that's all just rumors and paranoia being spread around. Not wanting to fall into such discussions, we head inside to the church and meet our next love interest, Freya. And about Freya, I'm gonna be honest, I know nothing about her because every date we set up, I blew her off and didn't show up. Whoops. In my defense though, I only did this because whenever Rosemarine or Leb would have a date, it ended up being, the same time with her. So it wasn't like I just didn't like her as a character, I just prioritized other people over her. Personally, she seems very sweet and innocent, but that's all I really know about her. I did end up going out of my way to watch all of her scenes with Elise, and from what I gathered, Freya starts off as a girl who looks up to Elise and she's always saying what's on her mind and isn't scared to fight for what she feels is right. As Freya finds it hard to stand up for herself and say what she feels she needs to, and not what everyone expects her to say. Over time with you both hanging out more, you can really see her grow a backbone as more intense things happen later on in the story, and you can start to see that she became more assertive because she's the only one who actually speaks up during that moment. I even feel she has some of the cuter scenes between you and Elise, but I kind of feel this game should just have two lovers to pick from. One was your lifelong friend I mentioned before, and then the new girl who showed up, as I feel Freya and Rosemarine kind of play the same role, just a different outlook on said role. One being an outsider while the other is used to the norm of the city, but she's more of a new girl to Elise as this is their first time they've interacted past occasional talks. However, before any Freya fans get upset, I did reach out to her voice actress for a small interview that I'll go ahead and play now. So again, thank you Phoebe for coming on here, and here's the interview I got with her to make up for not really interacting with Freya.
So unlike most projects that I've been casted in where I've had to do either a public or a private audition, I was actually contacted for this role. I didn't know what role it was gonna be at first, but I did hear from the casting director, Diana, who also is known as the voice of Elise, who also sang for a couple of the songs on the OST, who is my mentor, that I was going to be casted in this game. I knew that it was by Astral Shift, which made me very, very happy because I had been a big fan of theirs ever since Pocket Mirror and a fan of some of the individual creators and artists that work for Astral Shift, like Kira. And actually, I found out from Diana that Kira was a fan of me and a fan of my own music. So we're kind of each other's fans, and that Kira had specifically had me in mind for a certain character in the game. Now, I knew it wasn't going to be Elise because I knew that Diana was Elise. She had been part of the plan for a very, very long time for Astral Shift. But I didn't know who the rest of the cast was. I didn't know which of the characters it could have been. But I looked at all the characters that had been announced so far. Astral Shift was always posting work in progresses and updates about the game for the past several years on their Patreon, on Twitter, and they had revealed the 3 main love interests as well as Muffy. I wasn't sure if Muffy was going to be a love interest or not, but I counted her when I took a look at all the possible characters that I thought I could voice. Between Freya, Lobkuhan, Rosemarine, and Muffy, I was thinking to myself, well, I feel like I could be casted as any of these characters, honestly, but it's likely going to be either Freya or Rosemarine. Just going off of my voice type and also, you know, what I'm known for, I guess. And a lot of people did think that I was voicing Rosemarine when they played the demo, because at that point, we hadn't announced who the cast was yet besides Diana, and the rest of the cast was announced after the release on Halloween. I was very, very excited when I found out that I was going to be voicing Freya, because she was actually the one that I was hoping the most to voice. Just going off of her personality that had been revealed and her design, I just fell in love with everything that I already knew about Freya. And once I got to know her more through voicing her lines and by playing the game, I realized that whether I was voicing her or not, she would have been my best girl. There's actually a funny story about how I found out my role, that I was casted at all. Not Freya specifically, but how I found out that I had in fact been given the go-ahead to be part of the project. When Diana originally reached out to me in DMs about possibly being casted for Little Goodie Two shoes, I was really happy, but she also had me understand that this might not be the final casting. She emphasized that the Astral Shift devs really, really wanted me, but it would have to be approved by Square Enix as kind of like the final boss. So I wasn't sure. I wasn't 100% sure for a while if I was going to be part of the project. And then I went to Diana's panel at Anime Expo 2022. Both of us were performers and guests at the convention that year, and she was doing a panel about being a voice actor in Japan. And I was there because I wanted to learn from her, and it was really nice to see my mentor again. And while she was there, she was talking about her experience doing some casting and directing for projects as well, and then pointed to me in the crowd and was like, oh yeah, like Phoebe and I here are both going to be on a project together very, very soon. And I was like, huh? Like everybody in the crowd turned around to look at me, and my jaw just kind of dropped, and I was like, huh? And Diana says to me in front of everybody, oh, did I forget to tell you that you were casted in that? Oh yeah, well, it's happening. And I was like, whoa! So even though the people in the audience didn't know what project we were talking about, they seemed very excited. I was very excited because I knew in the back of my mind exactly what project she was referring to, and I felt just all these butterflies, and then the rest of the audience at the panel started clapping, and I was like, oh, thank you. So what a way to find out that I was casted. So we recorded a lot of different lines, a lot of different efforts as well, like grunts and screams and cries and sighs. And each of those had like at least 10 different takes. So there was definitely a lot of stuff that I personally have not heard come up yet in the game. So we can probably assume that there was some unused dialogue as well. Besides Freya, who's my other favorite character in the game, gosh, well, all the girls are such good girls. I can tell you who some of my least favorite characters are. You can, and maybe Muffin as well. Muffy. I will say my other favorite character is probably definitely Elise. She is so head empty sometimes. She's super heckin' cute. I love her a lot. She is our local bimbo in Kieferberg. Just like does not connect the dots when stuff is spelled out right in front of her, and yet has the confidence to continue to be really haughty and kind of rude sometimes. I love characters that are like Elise, and so definitely, even though Freya is more of the kind of character that I typically love, Elise is definitely one of the only tsunderes that I love in this world. Favorite sea creature? Gosh, I love sea creatures. They're all very cute, but I would say maybe the Dumbo octopus. I love their little floppy things on the sides of their heads. They're very cute. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for the interview. And thank you everybody in the Little Goodie Two Shoes community for all the love and care that you've shown towards the game, towards the devs, towards me. And I hope you guys can look forward more to some of the cool content that I'm making in the future that's Little Goodie Two Shoes related, like Freya's character song. Thank you!
Well, that was the whole interview with Phoebe, and if you're interested, she's doing a full playthrough of the game over on her channel with the whole Freya PNG tuber thing going on. So feel free to check that out after you finish this video for sure, because technically this is the only way to actually see all of Freya's parts voice acted. And she's also coming out with an album, so feel free to check that out. Again, thank you Phoebe for being on here, I appreciate it. Service now starts as the character Father Hans shows up rocking the best cut ever. He's the pastor of the village and tries to keep everyone in check while making sure the town continues to get ready for the festival. Personally, he seems to come off as harsh, but I do feel he tries to keep the peace between everyone while keeping in mind what's best for the village. It's now the morning and we see Lebkuchen, or the way the game spells it, Lebkuchen, who is Elise's lifelong childhood friend. He was also my main love interest for a good while in the game, and I mean, can you blame me? Look at this chin! You could chisel a fucking sculpture with that damn thing! As I mentioned previously, the game does a good job at showing you they have a history together with little jabs they give while still having many moments of them expressing how they care deeply for one another. With Lebkuchen always asking you to meet up with her at night to get free bread, while Elise drops her usual aggressive demeanor and shows she can care for others who aren't just her. You can really see that front she puts up drop and fade whenever she's talking with Leb, and it only really comes back whenever a joke is made that flusters or embarrasses her. We also unlock the relationship menu, which is used to keep track of our bonds. Before we leave, Leb gives us some pretzels and tells us how she heard we got home late last night, and that the townspeople were worried about her. Elise, being stubborn, acts like it's no big deal and no one should worry about her. Leb, understanding how brash Elise is, just replies by asking me to meet back up with her on top of the clock tower in the afternoon. And this is kind of how the rest of the main town parts will play out. You will interact with them and have dates with the girl of your choice whenever they pop up, and do tasks so you can afford to eat. Occasionally you will have to worry about the townspeople getting suspicious of you being the witch. And as the game goes on, with the hysteria always rising, the blame starts to get put on you more often. If you end up letting this meter fill up, it's game over, so answering the right choices to questions will matter a lot. Luckily, you can always just make a bunch of saves before you think moments like this will happen and abuse it. But answering correctly to these will make your suspicion go down. On one hand, I like this mechanic because it makes you think about how to react to situations and read between the lines. On the other hand, it can be more annoying at times, as a character will show up later that, as far as I'm aware, can max out your meter if you ignore her attempts at blackmail. So while I like it, I do feel it can be very punishing at times for no reason. Especially when some of the encounters near the end having questions be back to back, meaning multiple chances to fail. I just feel this mechanic could have been removed and nothing really would have been lost. We also find a note in the church that says some weird vague prayer on it, but I never figured out the point of it, or at least I couldn't remember if I did or not. It's now afternoon and we go and greet Leb on top of the clock tower, and she's already pulling the moves on Elise. This is when the both of them reminisce about the past and how they used to sneak up here at night to have picnics together. We also get some insight into Elise's friendship with Father Hans, or lack thereof, with them never seeming to see eye to eye. Elise personally feels there's no winning with that man, and that Leb just follows orders blindly and puts up with him instead of standing up for herself. With Leb chiming in, they don't always agree with each other and that she does have complaints about him. This causes her to yell out how old bald geezers like you belong in the pig pen, you oinker. This even caught Elise off guard, but Lev assures that he would never hear us. This then has both of them yelling off to the world about how lame he is. A very touching moment indeed. As time passes, we decide to head back down as it's getting late. She lets us know to meet her at the bakery later on, and we get a heart piece for her charm. Well, now that it's later in the day, we head off to go see Rosemarine. We find her outside and ask what she's up to, and apparently she's just waiting for the stars to come out. Rosemarine then starts to get all deep while telling me she's dreamed about us before in this whole town. She even says she didn't stumble here by accident, that it was fate that she arrived, even going as far to believe her fate is always with me, but then feels a little weird since this conversation was meant for later on when we were ready, but won't go into detail about what she means just yet. But with enough pestering, we get her to talk. She feels very nostalgic about being here, from our name to our voice and even the breeze that chills the world around us. It gives her a feeling of home. But this can't be possible since she's never been here before. She goes on to mention that the stars told her about Elise, and obviously we don't believe her one bit. We get a heart piece from her, and it's now time to head back home. Once home, we see Rosemarine by the fire, so we both eat bread together and relax after a long day. She ends up offering to make us dinner tomorrow, and she promises she won't make a mess, telling us that her granny always enjoyed everything she prepared, so we should trust that she will do a good job. Elise decides why not and allows her to make dinner tomorrow, and we even invite her to sleep in the attic to make her feel more at home. Rosemarine declines our offer at first, but since we're persistent, she decides that she will do it. Then out of nowhere, we hear a sound and Elise heads out with the broom to check it. This is Muffy. I hate Muffy with a burning passion. Muffy just feels so pointless and just adds extra things to worry about for no reason. We see Muffy was spying on us and ended up learning about Rosemarine being here and decides she will blackmail you to do what she wants. Or you can run the risk of her telling the townspeople about our new house guest. The way you get her to not snitch is by buying her the food she requests. Now, I'm sure the reason why she was annoying for me was the way I went at experiencing the game. As I said before, I wanted to see all the date scenes from everyone I could, which just meant scenes of Rosemarine and Lepkuin, but still. Because of this, I was always running low on money or had just enough to make sure I was good for some of the future events the story had. Because of her, it got annoying to make sure I had what she wanted. She does give you a day to get it, but if you're out and about and haven't gotten the money yet for the item she wants, and she ends up appearing, you will have to give her the item right then and there or suffer your suspicion meter going up. The few items she wants at first aren't so bad, but some of them I couldn't find anywhere. There's this one food she asks you to get that only shows up in the shop on Friday and it's $40, and how you're supposed to know this is beyond me. If she does show up and you don't have the item, it's better to just leave and take the hit instead of talking to her and saying no, because I did that and my suspicion meter raised to max. While we're on the topic of the meter, I on one hand like the idea of having to plan out what dialogue you should and shouldn't use to the townsfolks, but sometimes these choices can be so vague or give off the same feeling that it can come down to what feels like chance. I'm also coming at this with the mindset that I may just be very bad at picking the right choice, and this is more of a me issue. I mean, a few good examples are ones like this. Here are the two options. Which one would you pick that would be the right choice to reply to Lepkuin about how everything used to be easier back then? Well, trick question, they both have the same outcome. But let's do one that doesn't. Which one do you feel is the right option to pick about a boy who saw us with someone bad? It's surprisingly the option of he's just a boy. I don't know how the response is the right one when it sounds worse than if we just ask what a child would even know about the woods, but hopefully you see what I mean here. The main issue that comes from this is how hard it is to lower your suspicion meter. The only time I saw when you're able to lower it is when it's a moment of you picking a response to townspeople and picking the right option. This means it's very easy to raise it high early on and then walk on eggshells the whole game. Then Rosemarine decides to be annoying and cause issues with the townspeople that will also run the risk of raising your meter by how you respond. This will then force you to take her into minigames, wasting upwards of 3 bread pieces each cycle. It just becomes a lot of unneeded worry that can bring the whole pacing down to a slog. But that's my major issue with the meter as a whole. Muffy leaves and it's now time to get some rest, or if you're like me, you can go meet Lepkuin in the middle of the night to pick up some bread and have a nice talk under the stars. Now back home with Rosemarine, we head upstairs to show her the new sleeping area we made, as it's way better than what she had before. Once in bed ourselves, Elise is having second thoughts about everything. From housing Rosemarine to now Muffy knowing about everything. She hopes by tomorrow things will make more sense, but still wishes she could escape far away from here and never have to worry about money or starving. Then we see the time shift move over to this weird and distorted icon as the music sounds corrupted, just to then wake up in a weird room. Elise, not sure what's going on, decides to figure out where she's at. This is when we run into a golden girl, and this is the game's collectible that can unlock some extra scenes. There are 25 to collect, and they're scattered in random parts of the game's world. Some are only attainable at certain points, so make sure to check everywhere or run the risk of not getting them all. They usually talk about their past, and they'll mention how they've gone through what Elise is going through with different results. I won't spoil what you get for getting them all, mostly because I didn't really do it myself, and because I'd rather keep some of the stuff not spoiled for you. But just be aware, it's not worth it in my opinion since YouTube exists. Every time you collect them, they will lower your sanity meter. This is the blue flame meter at the top, and man, this meter feels like the most tacked on part of the game. The meter will go down slowly every time you're partaking in witching hours, which is where we're at right now. The other way to lower it is getting one of the golden girls' essence, or at least that's what I think they give us. This meter just feels so useless. Throughout my whole time playing, I only had to worry about it once. So what I'm pretty sure the bar is supposed to be here for is so you don't take too long in these little witching hour sections. But the fact I was able to clear 3 of them before I was even needing to, go drink a potion, so it kind of really shows how slow this thing drains anyways. When the bar does deplete enough, your screen is filled with the effect and constant laughing sounds on repeat, making some of the areas that are already hard to see in even harder. There's no real game mechanic tied to it besides the bar lowering and it's now harder to see. Elise won't act differently or show signs she's worried besides the icon up here, which is super adorable when she's going crazy. So don't expect her to start whispering to herself or laugh randomly, I don't know, just something. It really doesn't do anything to her at all. The only way to restore your sanity meter is by buying items, which means more money for something that isn't as important of a mechanic to begin with. It's again why the best advice I can give you if you're going to play this, focus on one girl and save the rest of the time for grinding money. So what exactly are the witching hours? All we really know as of now, it's something that happens after the nighttime cycle ends, and this ends up being the only moment where Elise will wake up here. The rest of the time, you'll travel here from the path outside the town. We search the room and find a key to be used on a chest to find another key inside of the chest, which is the key we actually need to progress. These are the areas where I said things get trippy, and the beautiful environments do a 180 and we get very liminal and isolating places that somehow still look jaw-dropping. We walk around this corridor hearing laughter till the world gets all dark, and a reflection of us is now on the floor, following our every move. If you have a keen eye, you will see these 2 statues that have 2 names on them. As of now, this won't have any meaning to the player, but later on will be important. We arrive to this huge room with floating candles, and I'm not the biggest fan of them. You see, this ring around them is a little too hard to see for my liking. If you step inside the ring, they attack you, so not being able to see this very well is not a good thing for me at all. But we explore this room looking for 3 keys to open a door, with 2 of them being easy to find as they're in this chest around the room, and the other being in this bookshelf. After watching the footage, I can see what the devs did to entice the player to check the bookcase as it glows gold, but I, for the life of me, didn't seem to notice this while playing. We open the door after getting the keys and find ourselves now in the void, till a fire shows up for a split second. We decide to chase it and see where it goes, running down a path as a vision of a castle appears in the background, as these strange monsters run by with us. It's a trippy scene for sure. The screen goes black, and it's now the next day. We say hello to Rosemarine as she's making us food. We tell her we're going to head off to the garden, or at least what's left of it, since we haven't been able to do anything with it after Granny Holly passed. Out in the garden, we end up digging a pair of red shoes as Elise is amazed by the beauty of them. She loves them so much, she breaks down in a song and dance number and heads off to town. The scene here that plays is quite impressive. We see her showing off the shoes to everybody, and there are even these clips of real-life dolls being used here. The song is about her asking the Ruby Red to let her be selfish for once and have everything she could dream of, as she's tired of always being looked down on, and poor. Don't forget the poor part. This whole song and dance number causes the whole town to gather, and Jock in here, I hate this guy so much. He assumes I'm wicked for dancing and singing in the town, even calls me a witch. Apparently, the reason why our song and dance number was an issue with everyone came from the fact it was riddled with sin, so that's why they're all concerned. Father Hans didn't ask us to come inside the church, and we're given the option to comply or refuse. I decide to refuse. Then an old lady appears as the world is covered in darkness. She mentions how at last he's made his move. Elise screams out asking who this person is, and she replies, just an old acquaintance of ours. She goes on to tell me we're favored by him, that we're clad in his will from head to toe. The old lady then notices the shoes and says how those are a testament of his gift. When we try to ask who he is, she ignores the question and instead tells us that we're his heritage, his flesh, his ardor, his blessing, his will. He lets us know if we do as he says, he can make all of our wishes come true, that any desire we have will be granted. We're told to speak what we most desire, and to Elise, it's fortune. Then a cutscene plays about how deep in the woods is a saint who can bestow blessings upon the faithful if one is to bring him 3 gifts made from the testaments to one's desire. A basket is shown, and this is known to be the womb, a carrier of life to hold all that is sacred. The tender flesh of earthly desires is next, followed by a picture of 2 crows eating what appears to be grapes. The sweetest nectar to be drunk, while showing a snake with a crown biting into a hand. Lastly is the good company, with 2 people holding hands. We need to then reach the gates where he dwells, carrying all 4 gifts to summon him. Once all that is done, fortune is what we will acquire. Then everything unfreezes as we're brought back to reality by Lebkuchen and Freya. We assure them everything is fine, but Leb is upset, and before we leave, she lets us know she'll be in the church whenever we're ready to talk. We go and meet Leb as she's worried about how we acted out earlier, since doing so only gets you the wrong attention. She mentions she will keep Father Hans from dwelling on the event and requests we come to meet her at dusk. We do our task, and then to our surprise, we see Rosemarine is here in town as people are surrounding her. We hurry over to her and get upset she's here, and we tell her to stay home, and the townspeople then realize, I know her. We just tell them she's my cousin, and luckily the townspeople buy it. We try to leave, but then are asked how long we knew we had a cousin, with us lying by saying that Grandma said that she would show up one day, so we knew for a while about her. Then we get asked how we met our cousin, and we mention she sent someone around town to find me. We then yell at her for coming here, and we told her to stay home, and she said she didn't mean to, as she was trying to get Flock. Apparently he took the laundry she was tending to and didn't want him to ruin it. She apologizes again, and we tell her it's fine. This is when we decide to come up with the lie that she's Granny's Holly's auntie's daughter. Since she never came to visit, no one knows what she looks like, so this would be a good lie to use. This is also how we came to meet each other, and that she enjoyed the town so much she decided to stay here. Plus, being able to help with the festival sounds fun. It's now dusk, and Rosemarine says how she's gonna head home now, and that she had a lot of fun. It's now time to go find Leb, as they do their flirting and all that jazz. With it now nighttime, we go meet Leb again at the bakery to get our bread and talk about more deep stuff. She asks about who Rosemarine is, as if there's a sign of jealousy in her words. We assure her after the festival she will be gone, and they just kind of leave it at that. Now back at the house, we talk to Rosemarine, and apparently she was keeping herself busy outside till we showed back up. Flock is even here jumping around as she makes soup for us to eat. Rosemarine notices our new shoes and wants to know more about them. She mentions that she's seen them in a dream before, but still isn't sure what's so special about those shoes. But Elise isn't really sure where to start about where she obtained the shoes. This is when Elise tries to tell her how she saw an old hag, and when she appeared, everything else vanished. Rosemarine tells us about what she knows and how fate is a wonderful thing. This is when she mentions what the testaments are and how we can make them. The tender flesh represents our body, or the vessel for our soul. All we need for that is something that carries a part of our mortal body, from things like nail clippings to a strand of hair. Next is the sweetest nectar. It's a representation of our vitality. Then I think here they make a sexual joke, or maybe it's my dumb monkey brain thinking it is, since she mentions, I know what you're thinking and that it could be it if that's what you're inclined to bring him, but that wouldn't be necessary. This is supposed to show your determination. Lastly is the good company, and Rosemarine lets us know we should meet him when our soul is the most vulnerable. When most people are vulnerable, they'll show their true face in a do or die situation, or when they're desperate. She sees we're still clueless, so she says it's love, since love reveals all. We finish up here, and we're told that she'll be outside near the granary if we want to come. While heading outside, we run into another golden girl and collect her. She mentions not everyone who goes to see him has a wish, as she once was what you call good company, despite her being the one wearing the red shoes. The one she loved forsaken her, and whoever you bring to keep him company will suffer the same fate. Personally, I think this should have been a lot more vague, because now it's quite obvious what will happen, and kind of ruins the big surprise near the end. In case you didn't catch on, I'll save it till the end though. We're now with Rosemarine, and we ask her who this mysterious person is, since her granny told her who he is from the folktale. She ends up telling us the same information we already knew from before, so not much is added, but when we ask her who she is, we learn how she's a strong believer in fate, and that she's dreamed about being here with Elise and Kieferberg. That even from the day she was born, she knew her fate revolved around them. That all the dreams she's been having are premonitions, and once she got here, they all stopped occurring, which only can mean she's finally living out her fate. With that fate being by her side, and even if this is all very strange, her granny is the one who taught her all of this. From nature, the cosmos, faith, and the woodland. She goes on to say how only some things started to make sense now, and how the dreams she had before were very vague and abstract. Then we get some more backstory about her and her grandma, while learning how the town treated them both poorly, from calling them bad names to other types of harassment. But here we are with everything falling into place as her grandma said it would. That if you put your trust in fate, It will always find a way to guide you. And with that, we head back inside and get some rest. Now it's time for the witching hour again, and Elise can't sleep since her mind is racing about everything we learned. We get a shot of her looking out to the moon and think about everything the old hag talked about. She finds it so hard to believe that she has to gather all the testaments to find out, because to her, this seems like the only way she can leave the town and live the life she feels she deserves. We get up and head over to the woodland to find out. Once we reach the woodlands, we are greeted with this horrifying area with trees and disfigured faces and these moths with eyes on their wings. Again, did I mention how amazing this game can get when it gets trippy? Honestly, this game gives me huge Yuminiki vibes when it comes to the atmospheric horror it goes for. While there aren't really that many things that could be considered jump scares, a lot of the horror comes from the unknown and uncanny vibes everything brings. It's downright amazing. We soon stumble upon a dress in a pool of blood covered by moss. We have to lead the moss to these candles nearby to reveal the golden girl was hiding under the moss. The golden girl tells us how the witch is very eager to meet her and our paths are soon to cross, and more than likely we won't last long in the black wilderness. Now, as impressive as this place is, the main puzzle gimmick is to figure out ways to get the moss to go where you want them to. It's kind of the same thing that Majora's Mask did in its first dungeon, with the moss needing to follow the fire that Link makes. But here it's expanded upon greatly. It even has this area where you have to climb up while jumping back down to find the right path, giving me Gen 3 Pokemon vibes. We run into another golden girl in the room who says she's taking advantage of us because she goes hungry. She wants Elise for herself, more specifically, our flesh. But we don't have time for that, and finally we make it through the waves of moss to stumble upon a basket with what seems to be my head inside it. It speaks for her to come closer, and that we shouldn't be scared. We're told to listen closely as it's very important. He's trying to take you away from me, but not for long, and that we should take this basket and gather gifts in it. Then find our way to him by going deeper into this grove. The head then talks about Elise being kin, her triumph, my beloved progeny, and that no matter what he's done to her, she only wants us. Then the old lady from before appears, saying she will allow him and his pets into the woodland once more, that him being able to tempt and toy with her is for the greater good, so that we can be reunited once again and she will finally be able to bear life in her womb once more. Moths begin to chase us as we rush out of there and barely make it to the exit. Out of the woodlands, we run into Flock, and he just stares at Elise, not moving an inch. But before anything can be done, Rosemarine interrupts and yells our name and asks why we're here. We just say we went for a walk. We all then head home, and now it's Tuesday. Elise realizes what happened last night must have been real and not a dream, but it's time to go to work. But before we can head out, we see Flock and Rosemarine outside. Flock also seems to be back to his normal joyful self. We ask her if she put him away last night, and she says she did, and he's taken a liking to the barn. She asks us if everything is alright, and we assure her we're fine. But then she interrupts us and says she knows we went to the woods. He doesn't pester for the details, but asks if we believe her now that she's speaking the truth. Elise doesn't comment on this and just scurries off to town. We make it there as everyone seems to be gone. Not sure where everyone went. It's now up to me to investigate. We soon learn from Lev and Freya that everyone is trying to help Eugene find his stolen horse that vanished last night. Walking through the town, we can see the whole demeanor of everyone change. People are on edge and not sure what to do with themselves. We continue to look and see where everyone else went off to, hoping to get more insight on what's going on. Gustav greets us and asks if we heard what happened. We tell him we did, but still aren't sure what exactly is going on, as Eugene chimes in saying how he's ruined now. Jockin talks more about a witch and tries to blame me as usual. Then we see someone leave one of the horse's saddles on his pig. Minecraft pig? Oh my god, they really did it. Little Goodie Two Shoes made Minecraft pig real! Not much happens after, besides having another date with Rosemarine. She pulls out a pine cone, letting us see it's one of her treasures from when her granny gave it to her. She explains how we're the same as the pine cone, and that the meaning behind it is how our time is limited here. But the scales on the pine cone each represent a moment in our life. And sometimes one may fall off or get damaged and feel not whole anymore, but you learn to be without it and find that losing one doesn't mean that you will lose all the others. We even see them both blush, and man, it's so adorable. Then we go on another date with Lebkuchen as she seems down because today was hard. She's upset about the altercation with Jockin because he accused a girl of witchcraft in front of the children. She intervenes, calling out Jockin, and is now punished for what happened. Apparently, I picked the wrong answer though and made her leave, so I guess moving on. Everyone is back from looking for the horses, but having no luck. The idea of a witch starts to linger over everyone's heads. Muffy then shows up and says she found one of the horses outside. We all rush to it to see the horse barely breathing, with it sprawled out on the ground as it zooms in on its face. They want to take it back to the stables even if Jockin disagrees, With everyone now arguing about what caused this, but with no one coming to a resolution, we all head back to town as it's nighttime. Elise, now making her way back home, comes across a dead horse, this time being picked away by crows. The crows can also talk. Spooky! Then a mysterious gold crow talks to me about how we're the bearer of the hex, and we should show him our desires, our greed, and boundless hunger for glory. Elise gets attacked by the mystical bird as her eye has a pattern of a crow in the iris. His final words are the testament to our tender flesh will be awaiting in his grove. After this ordeal, we go tell the townspeople about the horse, but when everyone shows up, the body is gone. Unsure where the body went, they started to think maybe I was seeing something or was confused. Jockin says we're lying as usual and we tried to explain how it was dead, but it makes no sense how it got away. Now everyone thinks we're making things up and Jockin blurts out that we're the witch and are trying to deceive everyone. Luckily, the townspeople defend me and we all decide how it's best to just come back at this tomorrow. Finally, back at the house, Rosemarine is there making food as usual. We tell her that we saw one of the horses on the way home, but it was dead, with crows everywhere. There was also this golden crow, and he said he got a testament for us to get from him. After we dealt with that, we hurried back to town to let everyone know we found one of the horses. Obviously, since it was gone when they all came to see it, she felt as if they all humiliated her. She starts to lose it a little bit and talks about how everyone treats her so poorly here every day, but with that wish, she wonders if he can grant it. Rosemarine replies yes, if we devote ourselves to him and do his bidding. Elise feels like if she wants things to change, this may be the only option she has left. To the point, she even says she would sacrifice all of Kieferberg to get the wish granted. That staying another day in this town is hell, and she has no choice but to find him. We let Rosemarine know we're ready to head off to the woodlands, and she follows along. But on the way there, we lose her as she runs off on her own. We try to chase after her, but with no luck. It looks like we're on our own. We head deep into the woods and arrive in another trippy area with a yellow hue everywhere surrounded by gray pillars. We end up running into Rosemarine here, and she says how she's sorry for running ahead, that she just got distracted. We're now reunited with her as we find a ring, and the golden crow appears out of nowhere and welcomes both of us to this place. He even mentions how we have brought good company. We demand he gives us what he promised, but he just lets us know it's a little further and to be patient. With the quick swoop, he steals the ring we had and calls out for us to come find him. Now, this area has this dumb bird enemy that pecks at you, and I, for the life of me, had no idea how to properly dodge him. Apparently, this game tells you that if the tree shakes, he will be in it, and I'm aware that he spawns in some trees, but I couldn't figure out exactly what trees those were supposed to be without getting attacked first. I ended up just healing and taking the hits to get past him the first time, which I know isn't the intended method at all. We make it past the bird and get the ring back from the golden crow, which unlocks the elevator to go deeper into the area. We demand he gives us the testament, with Rosemarine replying how we shouldn't talk to him like that. The crow mentions how all the answers we seek are deeper within these woods. Elise picks up on how Rosemarine isn't nervous as usual, as if she's hiding something. While walking, some crow starts to yell how we brought the witch. One even tells her how she's in our lair and has no hand in this grove. Rosemarine, trying to play it off, mentions how it's probably because of her funny hat for why they think she's the witch. Then one of them says, "You're in our lair." And while a name is shown that we can't read, if you remember the statues at the first witching hour area, they had names on them, with one of them being this name here. Off topic, since I'm stuck with one heart for most of the stage, I want to add how I wish games would stop adding so many visual effects to the screen when you're on low health, as it makes the gameplay more annoying to traverse in with so much shit all over the screen. I've just never been a fan of devs doing this to show I'm dying instead of just keeping it secured to a life bar. Maybe you or someone else would like these visual effects, but I could do without them here. We also run into some scarecrow enemies that jump out when you go past the bush they hide in, and will start to charge in a single direction trying to hit you. They set up some really interesting running segments later on, requiring you to get around these guys while being fast and proficient with it. We get through the enemies and lose Rosemarine again as crows attack us, but later we find her standing alone as we hear her speaking about the woodland, her grove. It's aching. Elise, confused, replies to Rosemarine saying how she's lost her wits since we've gotten here. Rosemarine ignores our words and continues talking about how it's aching from what was taken from it. She asks if we can hear it. Can we hear the roots? The earth. After she says all this, a demon creature drops down, appearing from nowhere, but her ramblings don't stop as she continues about how they will guide me to the rightful place, to the womb, where Elise was conceived, will be where we will meet our fate. Whatever this thing is tells us how once more he's trying to take Elise away from me and how he's turned her place into a parched wasteland. But her womb still responds to our presence all the same. She leaves off that she will bring me home and do anything in her power to do so. Then the giant demon rushes down at us, and this starts a fun chase segment, with us running away as fast as we can before it kills her. While getting away, we find a clearing that has a statue of me. Rosemarine talking again about how he was preparing for our arrival, and she's never seen him so eager before. If we don't hurry, I'll slip away and she'll lose me for good. We tell her we're leaving this place as we had enough, just to get chased again by the demon, and once we flee from it, Rosemarine trips and falls, so we have to go help her, and we see her hand is all old and withered. Turns out, it's the witch who's been disguised as her. Upon finding this out, we run off without her, bringing us to a dark, isolated world. We fall over and a bed appears and catches her. I think now we're supposed to be inside her head, as Elise is talking to herself about how alone she is, till what seems to be the real Rosemarine comforts Elise, telling us that she will guide her back, and we get this cute scene with both of them as a backstory of Rosemarine is shown, with her town seeming to be burning down around her. We even get to see when she meets Flock and how this goat is who brought her to our house. We now wake up in our bed as it's Wednesday. We find Rosemarine and learn that she wasn't even able to join us in the woods, and we just ran away from her, meaning whoever we were with in the woods wasn't the real Rosemarine. We then tell her we had a dream about her and how we saw her and her grandmother together, but somehow we were able to get the testament as the offering is a strand of our hair. Now we just gotta prepare it to be eaten. We head back to town to see it covered in crows, as they're all causing issues for the townspeople. We head to Eugene's farm and learn that the crows are trying to steal the grain, and so far at least took a whole sack of their supplies. We even learn about an oven where crows were building their nests inside of it. We could end up using the oven to make sure the tender flesh is made properly once we can get inside the building, but the problem is it's locked. We head to the church now and learn April is sick, to the point his fever's bullying him alive, and I know they're gonna blame the witches somehow and not the fact doctors in the 1700s are just bad. They said he kept mumbling to himself and his hands were injured, as if they were pecked by something. We even learned her goats, while they were praying for her son, were decapitated with their tongues removed. But no time for that, we gotta go swoon lab. And here I failed so badly with my love part that my suspicion meter went up. Nighttime has arrived, and on our way home we hear that April got kidnapped, as he's now missing. Everyone is now in the main area of town trying to figure out where he could have been taken to. Jockin then starts to blame me for being the witch again and the crows being a bad omen, but the townspeople ignore him and discuss about going out to look for April, and luckily for them, Elise offers to go and find him. While Father doesn't agree with us going on our own, Lisbeth appreciates it and requests we go search for him. We're now back in the witching hour and on a mission to find the lost boy. We arrive to the area we were just at before with the giant pillars scattered everywhere. We board an elevator that takes us down to the path below, but while down here, a new path appears out of nowhere. With no real leads where April is, we continue down the new path. The path is full of spiked walls everywhere with the scarecrows lurking around every corner. We're supposed to find these tiles that will act as a key for the doors. We even come across another golden girl who says how ignorance is bliss, and when we finally grasp it, it's always too late. If we continue on this path, we will come to face our biggest regret. She fades away, leaving us to reflect on her depressing words. Now, I want to let you all know that I'm not the best at puzzles, but usually can figure them out with a lot of trial and error. But man, the one type I can never figure out is slide puzzles. Ever since the one in Wind Waker showed up in my life, my hate for these have been huge. I even had a longtime viewer let me call them on Discord to help me solve it, and we still couldn't get it. Oh, it's one of these. I suck at puzzles like this. Oh god, dude, I don't know how to do puzzles like this. I understand the idea what you're supposed to do, but boy, do I suck ass at doing these. Not fucking with you. I'm really bad at puzzles like this. Okay, well that needs to be on the corner over there, so let's get that over to the corner. Oh, I hate these. I hate these so much. I see what the picture's supposed to be, but I do not know how to get them in the right spot. I've told you, dude, I told you guys, I don't understand how to do these puzzles. I don't know what you want me to, like, what do you want me to do? I don't get these puzzles at all, man. Is this why there weren't puzzle games for 61 days? Yeah, this is probably why. Okay. Let me share my screen.
On this, bro.
Okay, hold on. Okay. right, what do I do? I'm telling you, I have no idea how to do these puzzles. I don't think you understand how bad I am at this. Well, how do I fix this?
The last piece goes into the corner, like bottom left.
This one?
Yeah, that one goes into the bottom left.
Okay, so
Like the complete last bottom left.
I just have to do this real quick.
Just give me a second to cook, alright?
This man said I could help him. I could change her. Fucking Christ.
I can change it, guys. Fucking hate this, dude.
How do you think I
You
fucking
spent, like,
feel?
fucking 20 minutes on this already.
I don't know how to do these. I told you guys. You're like, oh, he's just fucking around. He's not serious. I don't understand these puzzles. I don't get them at all.
This shit is genuinely ass.
You said you know how to do it. How are you gonna shit on it? You're telling me I was an idiot. You're telling me I was an idiot, and now you're saying that it's ass because you don't know how to do it.
I'm just telling you how you could not solve it because you're smarter than I am, alright?
Hold on, it's apparently just this. It says slide the middle left piece to the center. And then slide the rest of the pieces clockwise. Down left piece, up. I'm so fucking done. We can now see a picture has formed, and it's Elise's house on the wall. And going down the path will have the player stumble upon her actual house being here. Inside the house is a bunch of blood spread out around the floor with a circle of candles in the middle of the room. A voice then speaks from somewhere in the room telling Elise to come closer and delve deeper into my grove. When expecting the weird bump in the cloth, we get a cutscene of it telling us about a woman who wished for a child of her own, how she would kneel and pray at his doorstep. It goes on to add how my grove became the vessel, my soil the babe's mortal body. In my very womb they celebrated their agreement. Then from him came what I lack, what I failed to lay my hands upon, a human soul, and later was given to her as her daughter. The thing in the middle of the room moves around and then can be heard talking about how when in truth, it's me your body belongs to. Elise lifts the cloth to see what could be lurking under it, as the bones of a deer with the insides missing can be seen. The voice then adds on how its womb was used for that woman's wish, that it was used. Then a golden girl appears above the paper on the floor and talks about what one should do when the Lord fails them. That her union was favored by the Lord himself, but because she could not bear a child, a wedge was driven between her and the Lord. So she did what she could, resort to his blessings. She brought him her beloved in exchange for a baby. That all she can say now is that this is what her soulmate would have wanted her to do. For her sake, for our union's sake, and yours as well. Elise felt a sense that the Golden Girl knew her, and with the story told before, this is more than likely Elise's own mother. This is also the only Golden Girl you have to encounter in the whole game. The thing in the middle then disappears, opening a path for us to leave. We arrive to a tree on top of the hill to see a very familiar face shoved inside. It's none other than Eightful. We rush to get him out of the tree before any more harm can come upon him, but then from nowhere, Rosemarine is here. She tells us the woodlands in this grove are aching, that our flesh, your blood, your love, all that's rightfully mine, my progeny, I can give you all that you desire, my beloved daughter. Whatever this thing is, goes on to mention how the last, Rosemarine, is she the one you desire. Then it begins to leave with its last words to me saying how they're coming and we will meet again soon. Miriam, the gold crow, appears again and he threatens us about how the lad is staying where he is. The creature is the one who brought him right into our beaks, so no way they're wasting a hearty meal by letting it get away. We say screw that and grab Eightful to come with us as the whole place begins to collapse. We come to learn that whenever I move, Eightful moves as well. Avoiding many obstacles in our way, we finally get the young boy to safety and leave this horrible broken world. We reunite him back with his family as everyone thanks us for saving the boy. They all go to the inn to drink and Rosemarine comes to talk as we ask if she's been home this whole time while we were gone. She replied yes and even made supper for our return. We both then get interrupted by some of the townspeople as we just tell Rosemarine to go home and that we won't be out much longer. Now in town, as everyone is celebrating me saving Eightful, with Father Hans even apologizing to me, just really goes to show how much community matters to these people and how they appreciate me for helping, with Elise even getting a little nervous as she's not used to all this support and praise. But as the night grows old, we head back home to rest. Now it's Thursday morning as Elise wakes up from her slumber, seeing the morning sun shine brightly through the window. Rosemarine is also outside today as Flock is throwing a tantrum from lack of attention.
Pet me, 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 oh whoa, oh whoa.
She even asks if we're feeling better and wants to know more about the woods and what transpired. Elise tries to give a very vague response, not wanting her to know what happened, but we give in and tell her that there's something in the woods and we're not sure what exactly it wants with us, but ever since Monday, she's felt this presence. Elise also believes that Lord Eiffel out there to hurt him. She then pauses for a moment and lets out a calm sentence that says, "We should move along now." We come across a golden snake near the grape area with it seeing the new shoes we got, and it mentions how those shoes we have will be what guides us to him. When Elise asks who he is, the snake just tells her that she knows who he is and that this is another one of his trials. The snake adds how fortune is what we're after and that he's here to welcome us to his garden and that he wouldn't let that wretched thing into my grove, unlike that fool. He mentions that the testament we seek is deep within the depths and that she must meet him there. Then the snake bites Elise with no time to react, now marking her with his hex. Having fate, we will be guided to meet him in his realm. With his final message to us, he informs us that he will be waiting for her arrival by the gates of Bettywood Forest of Berries. Now in town, we see everyone by the fountain as something is transpiring. They're talking about how they have to clear the blockage out as the fountain is obstructed. But with the more important issues needing time to deal with, Father Hans tells everyone we will all meet here again in the afternoon to figure out the fountain's problem, since the grain issue is more important. Plus, someone snuck into the windmill last night. When checked, the door is still locked, so they're not sure how someone got in there, and that the rest of the grain they have is covered with insects now, ruining any use for it. With that, everyone departs to at least try to deal with the bug issue, hoping to save some of the grain. Inside the church, we see Lepkuin being bombarded by people asking for prayers to the point she collapses from it all. Elise aids her and it's now morning, and they say they will be taking her home for now. Just another touching moment between them with Elise not wanting to leave her side, and she goes on to talk about how Leb breaks her back for people and because of that, she's always underappreciated and overworked. Leb tells us how she's not sure how to let go of her duty and purpose. She's also very aware that she's being taken for granted, but she does feel she takes herself for granted by trying her patience. She feels she has no more faith left in her, and it makes her a hypocrite to be praying to gods to help folks when she no longer even believes in the gods she's trying to call out to. Elise continues to comfort her on how she shouldn't feel that way because to everyone, she's the rock for the town and that she's kind and dedicated. But even if that's true, Leb still feels she's trapped. Elise, then tired of it all, explains how she's done watching her work herself to the ground and that's final because overcompensating won't fix it and she knows it. Elise calms down and then says to her to get some rest and that no matter what feeling she has, there's no reason to fear them when it comes to her. It's now the afternoon, and we gathered in town as Father Hans is here to talk with everyone. Hans has decided to ask Primal Door for help since they can't risk the festival not coming to fruition. Since the fountain is clogged and everything else is going wrong, it is putting the town into hard times. Elise then chimes in, telling them how she could see if something had lodged into the fountain and try to fix it. At first they mock her, but then she does it anyways, and to everyone's surprise, she pulls out a black snake. The townspeople erupt with all types of fears, as some think the town is ruined while others see this as part of the witch's work. The snake then slithers away as Father Hans tells everyone to calm down, and then the meeting comes to an abrupt end. We go and find Rosemarine after the whole ordeal and have another fun date with her, getting to look out at this amazing view while she mentions this place has been one of the nicest towns she's been in for a long while. Elise replies that she's just done with this town, but still can't come to an answer if she wants to leave all this behind or not. Rosemarine says how she has thought about a lot of things to do with us when she can finally reside here, that she's just happy to be able to have the chance to share memories. She has also never seen a town with a huge sense of community. Elise blows her off about it, replying how she's been here all her life and never experienced that idea she sees. Then the topic about the stars Rosemarine brought up before it gets mentioned, but my dumbass picked the wrong choice, so whoops, never mind, hee hee. Back in the town, we can see the fountain is overflowing. No one is sure why, as this is a bad sign. But not our problem, so back home we go to see Rosemarine, and she's inside with Flock. We tell her that after supper we're gonna head out because a serpent invited her to its grove. Rosemarine says how she'll be staying home this time if that's fine with us, as this isn't really her fate to interfere with. With that, it's time to make our way to the woods and start the next trial. If you thought the last area looked amazing, then get ready to see this one because man, is it downright beautiful. Having this enchanted forest with a nice calming blue hue from the water beneath our feet, seeing the reflections of clouds rushing by overhead from the water below. It's a weird mix of serenity and loneliness for sure. I'm personally a sucker for when games make the floor reflective or make it be water. But enough gushing. We see the bite mark from the snake starts to ache as its voice begins to talk. He says we did well at finding him in these depths, and we keep going deeper and come to him. We dwell deeper into the corrupted land, finding statues and knives to kill these thorn plants that are blocking our way. We soon stumble upon a door that we can't open. We look for another way around and clear a path to see a weird mask on the ground. We get closer to investigate just to see it start moving, and then the mask distorts into a horrifying demon. These guys will chase you, and they're quite fast, but their weakness is that they can't find you if you're on solid ground. They're not too difficult to deal with if it's one or two of them, but as more show up, they can be quite challenging to maneuver around. We lure the creature to burst open a door to form a new path for us to take. Continuing just leads to more statues and locked gates, but the golden serpent shows up and advises that there's no need to rush from what we desire. He says how we shared our stuff with the crow, so now it's his turn to partake. He even comments on the bite stinging, mocking Elise. He finishes off by saying to find him on the other side of the gate, and once she shows him her resolve, only then shall she give her what she wants. She asks before it leaves what the spirit's name is, and she tells us it's known as... The gate we must get through is locked by 2 keys, meaning they're around here somewhere, but before we can do anything, 2 trees fall on top of her, and then we're teleported to a random spot. When trying to leave this spot, we see what looks to be Lev as she appears and then just runs away. We begin to follow it, but then soon run into another talking blue flame that informs us our goodness is much needed. It mentions how it knows we're after the key to the serpent's burrow. It then tells us how the second half is guarded by masked beasts, but for the first half of the flame, we need to make our way deeper into the lagoon, and it will surrender it to us. We run around avoiding the masked creatures till we find the golden serpent again. We tell him we want to know more info about the things happening. We ask if he and the crow are his pages, but the snake laughs and talks about how they're his brethren. While they're bound to his will, they still benefit from his blessings. They herd the clueless like us and take them into this realm, with his only desire being to grant people's wishes. But is by his side to fill her desires, which is to consume her flesh on St. Walpurga's Eve. The serpent then vanishes, leaving Elise alone again. This is when we run into the next puzzle for the area. The blue flame says to follow the moonlight, and this will lead us to the map that shows the phases of the moon, with each section represented by one of them. The blue flame appears again and tells you that his other half is gone, as it's best left to rot in these depths, and if we help him find it, he will then help us get what we seek in return. The puzzle will have you talk to these specific statues who give very vague responses to what the objective is that you need to do. Once you talk to each of the ones required and figure out what they mean, this will make a flame appear that you're supposed to lead back to the other one. If you were smart, you avoided a lot of the mass scattered on the ground, but if you didn't, this part will be an awful time. I found this puzzle to be quite vague and tedious, mostly because the map is a little strange to follow and this whole area looks the same no matter what side you're on. The words they give can be way too vague at times, making it hard to know what you're supposed to do to go find and interact with. I feel I'm not the only one who thinks this because when I looked up a walkthrough, I found many people giving out different information that may or may not even be true to solve the puzzle here. Another mention you have to make sure you talk to the statues in a certain order, but from what I could see, it didn't matter what order you communicated with them in. It's just a very hard puzzle to comprehend, but I can't say it was the worst one in the game by any means. We reunite the fires together and get the key we've been searching for. Once deep inside the grove, we get paralyzed as we can no longer move. The snake shows itself again and taunts us about how we ache for the wish. It even laughs a little about how the venom is reaching our fingertips, but not to worry as his fear residing in her is merely a pebble in our path. Then we see what looks to be Leb and Freya wearing the mask those creatures wear as they grab a hold of me. The snake informs us how it is he who is to reunite with him at the peak of the full moon. The 2 copies of our friend start to talk as Leb says to embrace it, your most vile lust for sovereignty, your thirst for promiscuous blasphemy. Then Freya maintains about us pursuing it, as she aches to drink from your venom and bask in her glory. Then we're handed what we came here by a clone of Rosemarine. The snake asks us to allow him to endow her with all that is being and my purpose. I ache to adore your name, your beauty. I yearn for the taste of your venom. Then the scene of them shoving the needle into her finger plays, as we now have completed the trial for the serpent, getting the needle testament. We're now back in the dark void as we continue to chase the flame we saw before, as those familiar creatures run past us. Just like before, we wake up after everything as it's now Friday. Going downstairs, we see Flocker Rosemarine and she brought him in because of all the rain outside. We tell her we got the second testament and we're getting closer to finishing these trials, but it's time to head to town now. Once here, we see the townspeople, and apparently the wind and rain damaged the maypole, with Han's solution to this being to gather everyone for prayer. It's now the morning and it's time to put the moves on Leb again. She takes us to the broken down house, as this was the hideout we played at when we were both young. They go on about a story where they both plan to spend the night here, but when the grannies found out, they weren't allowed to. Leb then plays a trick on Elise and jump scares her. But then the mood gets all ruined as they get sad about the present never being as easy as the past. Now it's time for everyone to gather into the church as people are riled up, even attacking Father Hans. People are so worried about this witch and the issues she's causing for everyone. This causes Jocken to yell out how we should search all the women in town for the witch's mark. Elise interrupts him and scolds him for letting him know how that's wrong, and this causes an argument between everyone on who should do the searches, and they all agree Leb should. Then someone rejects the idea and mentions how they should search Leb as well, with Elise roaring back how no one is touching her. Then out of nowhere, they push the blame onto her and Rosemarine, since they don't know her cousin all that well. Then Eightful, the boy we say before, tells everyone that he saw her and that she's the witch. This causes the townspeople to turn on us, saying that it must be true and that we're the reasons why their lives are hell. Father Hans asks if we did meet our cousin in the woods or not. We deny it and mention how we didn't see her. While Elise is being questioned, the sink starts to overflow with water and they begin to put the blame back on her, believing this is proof of our involvement. Eightful begins to tell everyone how she was there, that she had yellow eyes. One of them questions if she's even our cousin. With all the pestering about her being related to me, we answer back with how you're all losing your minds and she isn't the witch. This barely calms their nerves as they still push their beliefs we're the witches, to the point they even diss Rosemarine's drip. Sadly, I messed up twice and raised the suspicion meter fully. Even with Freya coming to my defense, I messed up and now they tie me to a tree, and then this scene plays out with both of us being stuck out in the woods.
With it.
Fools. Sorry, Elise. All because I took the time for yourself being nonsense. Was that? Yeah. Okay, no, this is just part of it. Okay, cool. Oh wait, no, I don't think so. No, I think I'm dying. No, I just got brutally murdered. That's what happened. I just brutally got killed. Okay, so no, I just fucked up. That's what it was. This time we get the questions right and get the suspicion off of us, thankfully. With that whole drama now done with, it was sure a close call. After avoiding a near-death experience, it's time to go put the moves on Rosemarine again. She's happy we showed up and begins to let us see the rock she found that looks like flock. Elise just sees this as a bunch of junk, with Rosemarine saying how it's sus being junk once you give it meaning. Elise responds, wondering why she can't seem to find meaning in any of this. Everyone else loves Kieferberg while she's just treated like a wretch here and being overworked. So she can't understand why everyone finds this place so dear to them, that the world made more sense when Granny Holly was still alive. Rosemarine adds how the passing of their grannies has affected them in similar ways. Elise feels when Holly passed, all it caused was isolation. Rosemarine tells her that she felt the same way for sure, but because of the passing, she was now able to form her own path. Elise still feels like that doesn't work for her as the town doesn't see her the way she sees herself. Then Rosemarine spots something in the stream and turns out it's gold. This is when she mentions how the meaning isn't something you go out and find, it's instead something you create. She goes on to compare Elise to the nugget they found and how it's just waiting for the right person to come along and see it. She understands our mind is made up about the town, but if she chases after what truly matters to her, then she will find meaning in it for sure. With the new fire hopefully sparked up in Elise, we go on to do our task till night falls upon the land. We go and talk to Leb as the rain storms down on us. Leb mentions how she has a strange feeling about tonight's vigil. She can tell that everyone is just pretending to be calm. It's causing her to feel nervous about the upcoming festival. Elise comforts Leb and tells her she spent too much time comforting people and needs to relax herself. We're given our usual bread gift from her and off back to the house we go. While we're heading back, I want to talk about the rain here. I don't know why rain just feels so comfy to me, but boy, do I love the rain effects here. Even with everything having a more gray tone to it, the art direction still manages to give off an amazing look. Now, I could personally deal without the flash of lightning since it's like a flashbang going off in your room every time it flashes. Rosemarine and Flock are outside during the storm for whatever reason, and she asks us to dance with them as the weather is quite lovely. We force her to come inside and we talk more about the vigil and how it's required we go to show everyone we're committed. Rosemarine interrupts to ask if we're meeting him tomorrow even though we don't have the sweetest nectar. She also knows we've been going to the woodlands a lot to get the testaments, but all we have is the needle so far, since they pricked my finger with it. Rosemarine chimes in saying the sweetest nectar is a part of your mortal body, meaning we now have that one as well. Elise has her drop the topic and tells her to go get dressed. We start to head off to the visual till a giant lightning strike happens, letting our screen flash white just for a snake surrounded by purple letters to appear on the screen. Elise screams out, "Rosemarine, where are you?" The witching hour finally begins. We're back in the enchanted forest from before. We gotta find the serpent again to figure out what's going on. We make it to this room with trees surrounding the place as we yell for the serpent to show itself. Nothing appears after a little, so Elise goes on and sits on the water to have this scene play, where Elise questions herself why she's doing all this. Is it even worth it to risk everything just for the chance to leave it all behind? After getting the tender flesh and the sweetest nectar, is it even possible once we meet him, can he really grant her wish? Then a familiar voice can be heard, as it's none other than the snake from before, telling us to trust in him and believe this will all be for something. Elise adds how ever since the passing of Granny Holly, she's been nothing but an outsider. The serpent then chimes in how she's now a witch instead. A shot of Elise looking directly down into the water, to see her eyes glowing a faint yellow as she utters the words, "A witch." She lets out how she wants it. She wants her second chance at happiness. Elise then gets dragged down into the water by something to end up in our town, as corruption is spread out everywhere, leaving huge gaps of darkness sprawling across the land like a plague. The church door seems to be blocked by a magical force, or at worst, seems to be holding something inside. Screams can be heard as we realize that's Rosemarine's screams. We try to follow them and see her walking away. We get past the usual monsters, and I use a walkthrough to solve the switch puzzle, and now we're moving again. This time we're in this area with long staircases leading deeper into the void. A statue stops us in our tracks to tell Elise they don't take kindly to light in these depths. Not sure what that forbidding warning could mean. We continue down each of the staircases till we run into what she meant. A giant statue darts at Elise and kills you. Now this part has to be the worst part of the game. The way I guess you need to do this is in total darkness. You're trying to navigate a path with spike walls with no way to see. If there's a better method than walking around blindly, I couldn't find it. Now don't think about cheesing it by just turning the light on and off, since these statues are insanely fast. The only way I was able to do this section was I somehow got the statues all stuck, and then I was able to turn my lamp on to see the area long enough to map the path out. We run into a statue of Elise and there's an item in front of it. Turns out it's a leer. This is when the statue starts to speak to us and mocks Elise for being so surprised, even though she was talking to her own reflection moments ago. It tells her, this is all depending on how far she's willing to go with this, the sacrifices you're willing to make, that this isn't the last of her perils. It's now up to her to find the resolve that's hidden deep inside herself, since if she doesn't fight for herself, who will? After all that, we're back in the town square as we use a lyre to open the church. Once inside, we see a bunch of thorns everywhere as bubbles rise to the top around us. At the center is Rosemarine, tied as if she was being crucified. Then we see her turn into a cloudy demon with giant red eyes in the shape of a cat, with a grin outlining the bottom of its face. It asks us if we yearn for wealth and fortune that deeply. Elise responds of course she does and tells it to let go of Rosemarine. It mocks her and says how it won't let her go, and then begins to transform again, forming into a corrupted witch creature that looks an awful like Rosemarine. Which cool little detail, depending on who you've been romancing, the boss will take form of them instead. The creature tells us that there's still something we haven't come to terms with, the good company. You've sacrificed your mortal body for the tender flesh, and you know it's your blood needed for the sweetest nectar, yet it's the good company you refuse to surrender. Show me the depths of your heart. I wish to see how dearly you care for your beloved. This boss fight is quite interesting, as she will use flames to drop on you and summon giant spikes through the windows with insane reach. Your goal is to survive between the attacks and then answer a question. If you pick the wrong choice, you will instantly die, so make sure you pick correctly. The only real issue I had with this boss was it flipped your controls. I'm just not smart enough to grasp the control change, I guess. Plus, it has two different versions you can flip your controls with, so meaning whenever I got used to one of the ways it flipped it, it would then do it again, but this time would be flipped another way and throw me off. Overall, the fight is neat, and I love how this can appear differently depending on who you romance. If you do have trouble with this boss, watch how it hits the ground or claps. Each of the patterns will represent what attack she's going for. After beating it, we see it form into a giant puddle with the final testament acquired, the Vessel Testament. This is what the sweetest nectar will go into. Then the snake symbol reacts again as the monster is still here talking to us. It talks about how we're so bewitching to portray such pure feelings, and then it makes it want to keep me all to itself. We hurry out of there and back up to the town, as I guess the vigil is over. Gustav tells us all to gather here first thing at sunrise for the procession. Rosemarine greets us as we tell her why is she here and if she went to the vigil. With a laugh, she tells us she was sitting right beside us this whole time. Then she comes closer and asks if we've given the gifts some thought. Since we had the red wine during the vigil, why not do a similar gift to him? With everything, we could easily make the sweetest nectar. She then offers to wait outside so no one will see us. The screen then fades to the transition screen and now everything is gone and we can make the gift. We head inside the church and see the water still leaking everywhere. Grabbing the water and heading back outside, it's time to combine everything together, making our gift. But before we can, the golden serpent appears as the anime music kicks in, showing it's now or never. It says how our passion for the wish runs deep inside our veins, to the point of consuming us. It demands we give her the sweetest nectar, our blood. We play a minigame as it's now time. We dodge this hand dropping needles while we fill the vessel with blood, the anime song pushing us further and further. Next we see an eye crying down onto us, letting us fill the vessel with its tears. Once done, it says it will be waiting for us tomorrow. But now we have the gift. Only thing missing now is the good company. Then out of nowhere, Father Hans appears seeing us talking to ourselves. He demands we better move along now, so we head out of there. Back home, we head upstairs to sleep, as Elise waits for the big day to finally leave here. The screen fades to show us now back in the void we kept dreaming about, with the same event as before, having us run through flames, but this time, no monsters join us. Instead, the castle appears as it's closer to us now, showing the wish she's always wanted is finally in our grasp. The next day arrives as it's finally festival time. Rosemarine is inside with Flock as they're both excited for the festival. She asks if we're still set on meeting him, and we tell her that there's no way we're changing our mind. Now finally in town, we get to experience everyone's hard work. We go and visit the church first, and everyone is in a cheerful mood. With even some new faces here, it's sure to be a fun day. We now make our way to the inn where the main festival is going on. We're given some festival tickets by the kids here as they want us to play with them, but we're busy, so we tell them we'll play later. Now the last mission is we need to acquire good company. Giving us the option to pick between the three girls, I picked Rosemarine. Elise and her start talking as she says she's been meaning to tell her something. She asks if the fate she speaks of, is she powerless to change it? Rosemarine replies how it's never too late to change fate, as it's only meant to guide one's path in life. You may forge your own or allow fate to do it for you, but you're the one responsible for your own choices. Fate is there to make you aware of all your possibilities. Elise then asks if fate is up to her, then would she like to come with us too? Rosemarine laughs and adds how she was just thinking fate always finds a way. We then take her with us to the house till I almost caused myself to die because I was lacking the food bars for the cycle skips. Sadly, money is very low, so I eat the only bread I have. To then realize I'm still gonna be broke and have a chance to die. Ignoring that, it's now time to have a sweet moment. We see Elise and Rosemarine on top of the barn where they first met at, looking out to the view below. Rosemarine tells us how she's always dreamed about moments like this, and the fact she's really here in time for a full moon is unbelievable. Elise brings up about how this was the first place she's ever mentioned the concept of fate. Somehow she was right about everything. Rosemarine adds how she may have rushed into that conversation, but she was just so excited to finally find us, that everything always pointed her towards Elise. From her dreams to the stars, every little thing made sure it found its way to Elise. When she first saw Elise that night, a tremendous realization hit her, that it wasn't just a dream she kept having, but instead, it was a real thing that fate made sure to lead her to. Elise replies back how it all makes sense now to her, she just never wanted to admit it. That being with her every day really makes her happy. That everything she said about fate and our purpose, it resonated with her deeply. She mentions how yesterday Rosemarine told her that she could chase what matters most to her. She also said her being Rosemarine's soulmate doesn't mean she's hers, that now this wish isn't just hers and hers alone. Elise wants Rosemarine to be a part of the wish too. The full moon can now represent a new start for both of them together. Rosemarine replies back, "So does that mean?" Elise says nervously how she's never had the stars tell me anything or dream about you, but your name, your voice, it all just... Before she could finish the sentence, Rosemarine finally says those three words, "I love you." Then I learned the fact everyone says the name wrong is on purpose, it wasn't a mistake, so that's nice. It's now late, so we make our way back home, as now our wish will be granted with her being by my side. We get the item, a token of love, with this doll of her. Now that it's night, I realized I only have one bread left, meaning I have to get another bread, but turns out I have no way to. Even if I didn't be an idiot and click let's go, there was no jobs I could do, and nothing I could sell. Meaning, I was officially soft locked, and if I attempted to go to the next area, it would instantly kill me. So I got this far for nothing. Now, I did have another save that wasn't too far behind, but this one was also soft locked as far as I could tell. Since Muffy caused me to have max suspicion, with no way to lower it before people came and threw me to die in the woods. The last usable save file I had was 2 hours in, of a game that averages 10 to 15 hours. So for the sake of this review, we will be watching the ending and I'll talk about it. I also do plan to cover all 10 endings, but only really plan to go into full depth on the 2 endings I would have got. The rest I'll give summaries of. So again, if somehow you watched all the way here and you don't want the ending spoiled, then this is your time to leave. As for the devs, if somehow you watch this, I fully understand this is an issue I caused myself. This isn't like something that the game has that it's just a problem. I easily could have avoided this by, not targeting 2 different dates at once and only sticking to one girl. And prioritizing money better. But that being said, maybe make this idiot proof by just adding like a random acorn or something you can pick up that gives you an extra bread stat just so you can transition to the next screen. Because after this, the game's basically over. You can't die or anything. But yeah, thanks. Also, shout out to this guy for the footage here. This helped a lot. The witching hour begins as we both are here in the place that was full of moss. As Rosemarine is excited from all the flowers here, she says how there's so many butterflies and the sky is so blue. Elise stays silent and just tells her to stay close by. We then have another conversation asking her if everything seemed weird to her, like how there's all these dead branches just for her to say how they're in bloom and not to be silly. Meaning whatever we're seeing isn't what she's actually seeing. We put the testament here of the tender flesh. A path opens as we both know there's no turning back. In the next room, we stumble upon some golden girls here who all have the same shoes as we did as they attempted the same trial we're on now, giving us the vague statements they usually do. Lastly, we now place the sweetest nectar. The next room has a stump as it's now time to place the last testament here, the good company. A red mist starts to form around the stump as a sheep call is heard. A moth flies over and everything begins to shake. Then Elise gets sucked down into a giant hole. We're now in a room with meaty flesh and the floor is pulsating with a constant heartbeat. The old hag starts to talk to us as she says we've come to her, that Elise has done well finding her way to her grove, that she struggled to reach us before we reached him, but now she can take back what's rightfully hers. That she's tried many times to create life, using her fertile soil to conceive us, her womb. The screen goes red as the old hag says the final words we will ever hear. We get stabbed through the stomach as a picture of her is seen with blood dripping down her mouth. The old hag says how she can finally embody your human vessel, that she was used by them, all for the sake of that woman's wish. She bore us in her womb, nurtured us, yet he still dares to intervene with her kin. You're mine, not his, and not your grandmother's. She says how she can feel her heart thumping in her chest now, our burning fingertips and tearful eyes. She feels our living body cradling her at last with your human body which I bore, that she can now finally bear life in her womb and live as a woman. Then we get a shot from the start of Elise out in the woods as the townspeople find her, but this time, her words and demeanor are off. Turns out, she's been taken over by the witch, and now Elise is no more. So this ending is what happens if you give the other 2 offerings but refuse to offer the token Rosemarine gives us. But let's say you do that offer instead. You offer the token as now a path forms letting us go deeper into the world. Rosemarine talks to us about how she's so happy we brought her here to such a wonderful place. We just tell her to follow as there's a better place deeper into here. We find a tree as there's a hole inside full of fire with riches surrounding the trunk. We're given 2 options, to get my wish or worry about losing her. If we pick to continue, this is what happens. Rosemarine will back up and disappear. We can't stop now though, and head inside to the tree to see Flock is here. We hurry to catch up with him going through the hallway as laughter can be heard. This is when Elise remembers she's been here before. Flock is at the end and goes through a door as the place begins to fall apart, meaning we gotta book it, as smoke fills the area trying to stop us from leaving. Also, Jesus Christ, the guy who did got really screwed here. I'm just watching this footage and like, god damn, dude, I'm sorry. We try to guess what door he went through, and if you pick wrong, you die. But picking right means we can continue forward. Flock then picks another door as we do the same guessing game again while avoiding falling debris. Repeat it another time till we finally find ourselves in a hallway with Flock prancing around till he runs off again. Fire and the sounds of what can be only described as demons shrill in the distance. The deeper we go, the more the fire rages on. We make it to the stage as Flock stands before us. This is when we see Flock dies as a demon comes out of him. This is Ozzy. He asks Elise to have a word with him, since we're here for a reason, for our wish. He invites us to talk about it while we feast on what we brought him. A table then appears in the middle of the room, with golden girls surrounding it. A glorious feast is here. We ask if he's him, and he says yes. We ask if he can really grant our wish, with him responding back yes, but for a price. We then say what more could he want, as we were brought everything we were told to bring. This is when the testament appears on the table. He says how these are only gifts and not a natural offering, that she's yet to pay for what she truly desires. We question how he knew, with him saying how he knows everything about us. He even knew we would like the shoes. He says how the witch is rather tasteless, using him to lure Elise into her belly. He asks if we're well aware who he's talking about. He mentions how she was telling the truth, that these gifts did bring her to him, but she didn't quite need them, that him and her all share a bond together. He says how her grandmother is no stranger to him, that she's begged him for a child, and now look at us, back to our old roots. He goes on to say conceiving us in that witch's woodlands was a mistake, as she now believes she serves a part in it, but then he says to just push that past us, as he doesn't have time for that. That she did a good job bringing the tender flesh and sweetest nectar, while also bringing him some good company for supper. He asks her more about what she really desires. Elise goes on to say she wants to be rich and that's all she's ever wanted. A demon yells out to the Golden Girls to silence as their laughter was building and mentions how they're hard to tame. Elise asking him, what exactly are they? He replies how they're his golden maidens, basically servants. He then brings it back to the main focus, saying that she wants to be rich, that her heart's most desire is monetary value. Elise adding that it's more that she just wants an easy life, no more maid of all work nonsense. That to live in a castle forever is all she desires. To live out my dream forever with. She interrupts, yelling at the girls for laughing, asking what's so funny. Ozzy says to her, I have a price, Elise, with her replying how whatever he likes he can have. He then says he wants her firstborn child, with her bargaining back he can have her secondborn, with him questioning how he's supposed to know she would even have 2 kids. She plays a reverse Uno card, asking how he would even know she was going to have 1. She asks for him to trust her, as she's done everything to prove her loyalty. She demands he now grants her the life she wants, starting now. He lets out a laugh and says, first, let's indulge in the first course now. The curtains behind him open as 2 people are holding Rosemarine hostage. He says, let us make a toast. This is when the table disappears, as Elise runs up asking what did he do to her, and to let her go. He taunts her, saying how, I don't think you want that, since their contract is sealed after all. Come now, you know what you're doing here. Let's get this out of the way, why don't we? These gifts, the testaments to your loyalty, the tender flesh, your own mortal body, the sweetest nectar, your very own blood, the good company. Now that's the one you hold dearest to your heart. Rosemarine starts to talk, saying, Elise, you've done it. As Elise bargains with them to stop, that this isn't what she meant to do. We see the 2 people holding her down as we recognize them, as it's the snake and the crow from before, just in human form now. As they're now going to feast on her very own true love. They begin to rip her apart and eat her flesh and meat, leaving nothing behind, as a shot of Elise in utter shock and despair watches the girl she's fallen in love with be eaten and murdered. With nothing to stop this, Rosemarine tells her, this is what I was born to endure. You can yell out to stop, but if you do this, you get turned into a golden maiden, as he tells you too bad you didn't have the resolve to let this continue. If you stay silent, then the cannibalism of your lover takes place, with her trying to comfort you that it's just part of fate and nothing more. Elise listens to the screams of her as she's powerless to do anything. Her last words are, Granny, I'm meeting you soon. Ozzy, after finishing her, lets off a laugh and says how he's full. We then see she's been turned into a golden girl as well. Ozzy says we will meet again someday when my second child is born. We're then kicked out of here as our contract is sealed and our new life begins as day 8 is shown on screen and says, a new day. We then see Elise sleeping, and when we wake up, we still seem to be in her house that she's grown up in. We then get a scene of her walking through the forest path as the whole town is here to see her away, as a carriage is here made of gold and white paint that resembles the shine of pearls. The person driving it says, Miss Elise, not even gonna try to pronounce the middle name, don't give me shit, meaning our wish really did come true. We're now being invited to be escorted off to the castle, the life she's always dreamed of. We then get a shot of the sky as a blood moon is seen. Then we see a bunch of golden girls lined up as Ozzy talks about how wishes are the manifestations of one's innermost desires, oftentimes leading to glorious glee, others to grief. Bearers of strong emotion and hopeful hearts youthful girls risk their very soul to reach my realm, carrying their lanterns deep into the woods, lighting their paths like fireflies one after the other. Whether they're granted their wish or they're offered a sacrifice, all their dreams, all their souls, all of their regrets, they all fall into the palm of my hand. One way or another, my beloved golden maidens, how much I cherish them. Out of all the souls I've consumed, Elise is the most promising, the most fragrant. Will she thrive, or will she sink into the depths of despair? The screen fades to black. Elise then begins to talk about how she was granted exactly what he promised her. Nothing more, nothing less. Fortune, wealth, a second chance at happiness, yet. We see a book with her and someone crossed out on the cover as it opens to show her in a very beautiful dress. She continues to say no matter how big the ballroom is, how glorious the dresses are, she found herself feeling out of place, that none of this came close to what she sacrificed. It all felt vapid, worthless, far from what I truly wanted, that the harrowing regret haunted me day and night. Unearthly visions of her, of the look on her face the night I lost her forever. He too visited her in the dead of night, reminding her of her foolishness. All I had left was her progeny, her beloved son Henry, my one and only child. I will never put you in harm's way. Never will that demon get my second-born child. There is only you, Henry. You're my only hope, my one chance at happiness. Yet fate wouldn't have it that way. She ended up having twins, a boy and a daughter, meaning it's only a matter of time before she's taken from her. Elise goes back to town to meet her childhood friend Leb, as she's the only chance she has to save her second-born. She says how she knows why we're here, as she doesn't need her to say anything. She gives us a pendant with a rose on it, says to keep it closed and it will keep you from harm's way. She then says to her, "Don't ever come back here, Elise. You've chosen your own path, but tell me, did you get what you wished for?" Elise responds, "She did." As she got exactly what he promised her. Nothing more and nothing less. That she paid the heaviest price imaginable and lost what she cherished the most. Her dearest friend, Rosemarine. So yeah, that's the two main endings I would have got. So real quick, let's run through the other 8 endings. So ending number 2 is the same outcome but with Freya, where she dies. You come back later on to see that Gustav never found out what happened to his daughter, and he even made a gravesite for her as a way to mourn her passing. Elise cries after seeing this as she's hurt 2 people from her own selfish wants. A third is with Leb, who dies and tells her how she'll never forgive her. Years later, Elise comes to a monastery to try to get redeemed for her wrongdoings, just to see Leb show up as it's her soul, and she's forgiven her for everything. She even takes her to the afterlife when Elise dies. So, kind of bittersweet. The 4th ending, you learn Father Hans is the one causing all this weird issues, as he's trying to summon the witch to rid the evil surrounding the town. He sees Elise found out and both have an argument just for the witch to appear and murk his ass, and then takes over your body, leaving behind the red shoes you had on before. Ending number 6, you offer both offerings, but this time don't offer the love token. You end up snapping out of the trance, but Rosemarine ends up leaving a day after the festival, but does promise to return someday in the future. She even takes Elise's apron to remember her by and ventures off. 3 years later, she comes back meeting you in the woods as they decide to spend the rest of their lives together beneath the stars. 7 and 8 are just the good endings with Freya and Leb, where you both have a happy ending together, with Freya and you leaving to Primdolf to help her become a seamstress and make her own shop. Leb and you leave to travel cities together, and when you return back, she's made the new elder, and Elise becomes the mayor. The 8th ending has Rosemarine snapping out of her trance and sees she's in the woodlands with you. Rosemarine then decides instead of just going home, she's the one destined to bring Elise to him. She basically just forces Elise to fuse with her into a tree and die, as Rosemarine tries to comfort Elise, saying they can be together forever now. Ending 9, you snap out of it and try to go back to the village with Leb or Freya, but then get caught by townspeople and then burned at the stake. Ending 10 is the one where the old lady killed us, which I covered, but that was Little Goodie Two Shoes, and man, this was so much to go over. I'm sure this video won't be that long, right? But with that being said, I personally feel this is my game of the year for sure. Even with the things that bring this game down, I loved every second I spent with it, besides the soft log I faced. Personally, I think it's such a crime this game isn't well known, especially after being published by Square Enix. What I think is really unique too is you have the voice actresses of Lev, Freya, and Elise being very active in the LGTS community. It just shows how much everyone believed in this project, and they're keeping the community strong. I really can't get over how much this game creates a sweet community. I really do hope this game gets more popularity for sure, as I think this is a fun experience that anyone would love to try out. So go out and pick this game up for sure, because there's still so many unique events that you can see that I didn't even talk about here. It just goes to show how much content is behind this $20 price tag. But with that being said, we have one more video left to go for 61 Days of Spook that had to go into Christmas because time management sucks. So see you guys when we play Fragile Dreams for the Wii.